All right, good morning, everyone. So, this is our third session of the Bhagavad-Gita reading sessions. And this is our second session reading this book by Georg Feuerstein. And we are going to be discussing pages 22 to 79. And we only have one participant who's actually read all those things. Some of us have not read the whole thing. So we'll figure out how to go about this discussion. We may have to have an overlapping discussion in the next session so that we can have a proper overview of all the things. I think it may also be the case that some of them have not read it, and so therefore they feel like they may not be welcome to join the session, which is why we have only a few people in the call right now. But anyway, so first of all, do you guys have a notes of what you would like to discuss today?
Yeah, I made some 3 or 4 questions that I found worth discussing about.
Okay. And Avantika, what about you?
I have, I have just one.
Okay. Hi, Ankit. Did
I
you?
I
Mhm. Go
I've
ahead.
gone through 47 pages till I've yet to
Okay.
complete all of it.
Okay. One thing about this is that I think it was a reasonable amount of reading to be done. To be honest, it was I think 50 pages, right? So that's not a big assignment. But I do feel like some of us maybe didn't have the time or something. But I think instead of reducing the number of pages the next time, I think we should all aspire to maybe read faster or read more, spend a little bit more time, so that we can cover the things. Because the reason why I'm saying this is because I was reading all this, I think there is a lot more scope for us to carry forward the momentum of this particular group who's keen on reading material and discussing, having these educated discussions, right? Whatever we have in the Saturday 11 a.m. sessions, these are I feel like it's somewhat exchange of perspectives that you form from casual observations and things like that. But I think there is room for us to have more informed and educated discussions which are coming of a reading and something like that. So there is a lot of scope for a community like this. So I think we should aspire to read more rather than us diminishing the amount of reading, even though. So I hope you guys are down with that. Now, before we get on to the questions that we have, I would like to maybe have us go around and exchange general perspectives of whatever we've read. So who would like to go next? I mean, just a general impression, of the pages that we read for this session. What are your general impressions?
Yeah. So I think the book actually we discussed this last time as well. The part one is maybe it's it- it's easier to overlook. It's not it's not very important, but I feel it is added a lot of context to the what is going on around.
Mm-hmm.
And also, just because it is not only speaking about Mahabharata only, right? It is also speaking about a lot of history of
Yeah.
that all the texts and the timelines and how they might have the origins of Krishna might have even started in Vedas themselves and
Mm-hmm.
trickle down the effect that all the poets or the writers took inspiration from all the Vedas themselves, right?
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I think it did the writer did a very good job in segregating into all these chapters. And honestly, it is kind of overwhelming for me personally because it is too much of information. It's not like too much of information, but I'm not actually able to connect everything in a concise manner because I understand that author tried his level best to put, at least give a little bit of context to understand when going into Gita. But as I read through it swiftly second time, it made a little bit of better understanding. A little bit, not as much as overwhelming it was in the first time because last time I was confused between the the incognito, because the word incognito was like stuck in my mind, and then even I read that no.
Yeah.
So that kind of English words are coming, the actual meaning of. If it was like in my own language or in Sanskrit itself, I'm sure that the word would have been much different, right? So it's like something like that.
Yeah, I think this introduction, like you said, is very valuable. I think it provides you the context and prepares you. I mean, obviously, I haven't read the whole thing yet, but I think it does offer a lot of preliminary context to prepare you for the reading of the book itself. So it's very helpful, like you said.
Yeah.
But I think, I mean, I do have certain points about the language use, but I'll maybe like wait for others to finish with the general impression exchange. So who wants to go next with their impressions?
I want to go next.
Yeah.
So while I was reading, especially this, I'm sorry, I don't pronounce it very well, syncretism section, there was one thing that I noted, and I was like quite amused that when it comes to discussing this particular topic, author has put in the research of many people who are finding contradictions, and then people who have given arguments telling that it's not an actual contradiction, and also his opinion on all those things. So to me it looks like summary of multiple researches than one person's point of view, so it's like reading multiple books at the same time.
And do you find that beneficial, or is it?
I think I have not made up my mind yet about this particular question, because see, when I already have so many point of views upfront before reading, maybe it limits my own thinking. But having said that, I haven't made up my mind as of yet whether it helped me or it was a disadvantage.
Okay. Um, I mean, I have a point about this, but I'm not sure if I should say it now or let the others finish with their exchange. But I'll say, because like maybe we'll forget it. See, the thing is about, when I look at this, one thing that we have to note about India versus like other, like for example in the West, right? They actually spend a lot of energy into theological exploration. I'm not sure why the recording stopped and started, but I think my Zoom cloud is like full or something. But basically, this whole notion of this author, like discussing these things, and then like discussing various perspectives, right? I think it's beneficial because it is giving you various perspectives of the people who are foremost interested in having a very deep theological discussion about a particular topic. And uh, I think it prepares you as to what the general consensus is. I mean, you don't have to form your opinion of the Gita based on those discussions, but it does give you an insight of the perspectives of the Gita among these circles. So I think it does do something to educate you, but I also see the other side of it, where it's like, for example, if you're watching a movie, you don't want to see the reviews before you go watch the movie, because like that reviews itself, even if it doesn't have any spoilers, can have certain expectations of the movie, right? In that sense, maybe it is detrimental, but I guess it depends on how you take it. I think for me it was very like enlightening. It was giving me a certain understanding of how people talk about it. Okay. So thanks for sharing, Avantika. What about the others? I think Ankit and Ashwin, did you guys read the pages?
Actually, I haven't read anything. This is my first session here.
Okay. So we basically like this is basically like based on the page numbers that we have for the session. So you must have read it, so you can come and discuss. So maybe next time you can come in after having read those pages. Ankit, what about you?
I have read till 47 page. So I can start. Like they have discussed about the context of the roughly about the context of the war, how it happened.
Mm-hmm.
So I will go just up, just the point of dating, when the dating of the Gita started. So, so I think that the dating is relevant because we need to understand when was this written and the context of the world order at that time. You can relate those two things to understand the Gita in that context. Why was this being written in that era? Because the beginning was written like as 6500 BC. So
Mhm.
that is the origin, and the location is Afghanistan. So we can
So,
understand what was the history of that
just to
place at
just to
that
punctuate
location.
that it is speculated to be 6500 BC, because all of this is like speculations, right?
These are speculations, and there must be some kind of correlations they have might have founded, not some real evidences to write that date.
Yeah, but I don't know. I mean, this has been I did this like a while ago, but so I'm not really. I don't remember it properly. But was it like stated that this is exactly when it was written? But because I remember it being like multiple speculations, and the author also provides like, this is probably when, but obviously nobody can be sure. That is my understanding. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Like there is a mention that from 4000 BC to 2000 BC, the range is too vast. They have given a
Yes.
big window of time, and they have
Yes.
written that period indicates of Rig Veda based on astronomical data and general historical reasoning. So they have
Mhm.
mentioned how they have arrived to this
Yes.
conclusion. So
Yeah.
they have not stated the exact date. So they have considered the margin of error in every dates.
Right. Right.
And
Right.
then they have described each of the characters of um, like Arjun, who is Sahadev, who is Nakul, who is Pandava, who is those, because these are the important characters for the upcoming chapters or the whole book. So each one has specific qualities which are described, and like they are how each one can contribute differently to the war that is being mentioned in this. And then comes the divine incarnation of Vishnu, which tells about the uh, 10th avatar. The ninth one is something that shocked me, that Buddha is written in that. I don't know how it came here. And the eighth one is Krishna. So
Yeah.
first one is Matsya, then Kurma, then boar, then dwarf, then lion, like these sequence. And something people use these sequence to mimic the proof of evolution theory. Like we know that
Mhm.
all the animals started, all the humanity started from water. All the first living organism started in the ocean. So the incarnation of Vishnu is also started from water, fish. Then it transitioned to the land. So the second one is turtle. Turtle is a transitioning animal which came from sea to land. Third one is Varaha, boar. So we can see that something which mimics the evolution of animal, which mimics this one. This is my understanding, and I have read about this in different context also. So they have mentioned, and ninth one is bit shocking. Why Buddha is written as a avatar of Vishnu?
I think it was added like maybe like down the line. Actually, it was. He also talks about the reasoning why it must have been added, because like he was talking about like how the Buddhism was considered to be a threat to
Hmm.
Hinduism, and then basically the Buddha was added to sort of like imbibe some of the virtues of the Buddha without, I guess, like isolating. I'm not really sure. It was kind of vague. Um, but yeah, I think these things get amended, right? I
And
think
tenth one is yet to come. That is Kalki Avatar. So people are fascinated about this one because usually the right wing group of India is focused on upcoming of this Avatar. And
yeah, I think that's very common among cultures, like even in Christianity they have this like second coming of the Christ. Um and these kind of like, I guess, like you can call it myths. And also regarding the second avatar that you talked about, that actually made me think of something else, the turtle, right? The fish and the turtle.
yeah.
The turtle
Mhm.
is actually a myth. That origin myth is something that is common in multiple cultures, even in African cultures, right? There are like tribes that actually believe that is how the universe was created. So this, and if you look up this whole idea of the giant turtle origin story, right? It talks about the Vedic story of like how Vishnu takes the form of a turtle, Kurma, to support a mountain on his back. And then in Chinese mythology, there is this creator goddess cuts off the legs of a giant turtle and uses them to prop up the heavens. I mean, I'm just reading off like what I'm looking at. And in Native American mythology, this is like in North America, in the creation stories of Lenape and Iroquois people, a great sea turtle carries the world on its back as soil is piled on it. Many indigenous tribes in North America still refer to the continent as Turtle Island. And it also says that like there are other cultures, even African cultures have this turtle myth, which is really fascinating, because even the flood and the turtle thing, these are all like ancient recurring themes in various like independent cultures, and you get to know about it through, because like now we are globalized and we are able to like go across cultures when we're learning about like very similar stories, which may indicate that maybe like all of us were in one place, and then we all had the stories, and then we migrated and we carried the stories with us, or something that happened across the globe and it was felt by everybody. I don't know. It's really fascinating. Which is the aspect of this whole thing that is really fascinating to me, is that it kind of like carries the narrative of the like whatever has been echoed across multiple generations of ancestry. You can see it in this, even in the way the stories are rendered. It's very maybe like makes you think of, like, I want to say nostalgic, but obviously I haven't experienced those. It's like it reminds you, or it makes you think of something that is ancient, which is really fascinating. Okay, so I think all of us have shared our general impressions from the reading. So who would like to go first with the points that you have written down to talk about? We'll take turns. Who would like to go first? Okay, maybe I'll go first. So last week we talked about syncretism. I think we were talking about like how we were talking about consistency, and then Sandeep brought up this point of like syncretism. He was talking. I mean, we hadn't read that part until then, and from my reading of that, right, I think whatever I heard from Sandeep last time, I think it gave me a different idea of it than what I got from reading the book. So I wanted to just clarify on this. I think last time when we spoke, like Sandeep was talking about syncretism as being a description of the consistency across various timelines and plots and all these other things. But what I understood from it is that it contains like an amalgamation of like various seeming contradictions. It's like things that are in the either ends of the spectrum. It's contained within the Gita, and there are like critics of this syncretism. They the author says that the critics of this syncretism are people who confuse this holistic nature of things, which contains these seeming contradictions, and they think that it's like it's logically inconsistent. But the challenge is that it's actually an Eastern way of thinking. The way that I understand it is that, like, I think the Western scholars who are like criticizing the Gita for being this like like a jumble of contradictions, is that they don't understand. They have like a very logical way of looking at things, and their logic is like informed by this linear thinking that they have. And when they see something that looks at things in a non-linear way, and like contains contradictions without like prejudice, without like taking one as the truth and the other as a falsehood, then they just find it problematic. And I think it's more of a cultural issue rather than an inherent flaw with the Gita. I think this is very common in Indian literature, especially the Mahabharata and Ramayana. Even there is a Western criticism that this is just like, it doesn't make sense, or like it's jumping between too many things. It doesn't have any linear structure. I think that is all like related to how we culturally perceive things. I think in Indian culture, like people have we have in Indian culture, we are okay with like, seeming contradictions, and it still makes sense from a certain perspective. But in the West, like it's all like, black and white. It's like either this or that, and it's like sequential, logical, linear thinking. So that is a problem that the author was talking about when Western scholars criticize it. They don't get the whole holistic, syncretism that comes with the book. But yeah, that's just a point I wanted to make, because I've seen this kind of criticism about, like, even the British, when they first learned about this, like they scoffed at how incoherent the whole Mahabharata or the Ramayana, these things are. But it does come from a cultural bias as well. But I think the author did a great job of like summarizing the discussions, scholarly discussions about these things.
Yeah. So can I speak, Raga?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
So I don't remember, I don't think I was talking about the timeline. I was actually talking about the exact line that was written in the book. So metaphysical, theological, psychological, and ethical teaching. And the book itself defines the syncretism from the Oxford Dictionary. The attempted union or reconciliation of diverse or opposite tenets or practices, especially philosophy and religion. This was the exact line I was quoting. Yeah. So yeah, as you said, I actually am very glad that we chose this book, because I wouldn't have got all this. I actually, obviously, I did had some kind of prejudice. Not like prejudice. It's more like as you have mentioned in the last session, we did experience some Mahabharata in one way or other, like from childhood, right? So we do have this kind of stories and characters. When you say Bhima, an Indian would understand what is Bhima, and we have our own imagination what he does in our own understanding, but a Western person might not even will not be able to understand what the character is until it is explained. But again, even though we do have some kind of a backdrop what Mahabharata and Gita is, we do have a shortcoming of understanding exactly what is actual history of text, right? I never understood what people talk about Upanishads, Vedas, and some say, there are like a lot of texts, right? Like they're all over there. And it's always been overwhelming, and I never showed interest into like, okay, let's learn something. And then even when I did attempted about reading some of the texts, and I understood myself there is a lot of language barrier between my language and the language it is written in, the texts are written. So I never took the initiation of going into them deeply from my side. And then I think the introductory essays in this book has given me at least some kind of a structure. Okay, this is how it could have happened, and I'm very glad that this author has put in all this, Western way of looking at the things, and then also giving how he understood what actually the Eastern way of thinking about it, and he's also projecting what he's also mentioned a point where Hinduism has done you know disservice to calling Vyasa as a person instead of a group of people. So these kind of things are like very good to hear, because it is very necessary to point out all these things that are shortcomings from all the viewpoints that have been exist around Gita for a long time.
Yeah. No, I think like I think that what you're saying, right, about our impressions of Mahabharata and like our common, like, this is the layperson understanding, right? This is a very real situation for most Indians. Most Indians, we don't, like, in this modern generation, like especially the millennials and Gen Z especially, they I think they don't have like any kind of like affinity towards it. They only like hear the general impressions they have. This is why I was talking about like second-hand knowledge and first-hand knowledge and all these things. I think most of us have like third-hand knowledge. We've heard people who have second-hand knowledge talk about things. That is how shallow our understanding of a lot of these things are, which is why I'm actually very keen on this particular book, like a book discussion, because like we are actually getting a first-hand perspective of an interpretation of the Gita. It's not even the first-hand reading, but it is as close as we can get in a practical sense. And yeah, like I'm glad to see, like, that this is an opportunity that is coming up. Even for me, like I probably would not find the motivation to pursue this deeply if we didn't have this social, support structure for us to come and discuss these things and exchange perspectives and learn.
Yeah.
Like instead of just like going by somebody else's thoughts of things and staying ignorant and staying quiet because we don't know enough, we are actually spending the time to learn. So that's great. And actually, one more thing I wanted to talk about is that as we were reading these, I was getting to page number 60, and they were talking about like Upanishads, right? Upanishads are basically the, I guess, like the lay person's, like, bridge to the Vedas, right? The Vedas are very like too inaccessible to the common man. It has to be studied as a
Yeah.
scholarly endeavor, right? So the Upanishads are basically designed to help the lay people get access to that wisdom. And I am actually planning to like consider that as like the next book that we will look into. There are some interpretations, like the English translations of the Upanishads, more like excerpts from the Upanishads, right? Upanishads are like a huge volume of text. So there are like books that are like dedicated excerpts from that. That is also something that we can look into, because like that will give us like a alternate, like, pillars of theology. Because like one of the things that I'm about to discuss, like, that's in my list of things to discuss, is that there is like Brahmanic wisdom, and then there is like Vaishnavic wisdom, and all these different schools of thought, right? We all think of it as like Hinduism, but these are like different schools of thought. And it is important for us to like even know enough to distinguish these different schools of thought. But yeah, great thoughts, Sandeep. I think Avantika, did you wanted to say something?
The next topic, can I go?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Okay, so I'll quote one line from the book. So they are analyzing 4 questions, and the fourth question is the divine wishing humans well, or is it chastising or indifferent to them? So I wanted to discuss more on this particular point. So why is the author
Can
thinking?
you give the page number?
Yeah, page number is.
Books page number is 43. I mean,
Okay.
at the bottom it's written 43.
Okay. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so where is this context coming from? That is what I was trying to understand. Is it coming from the questions like, if divine is wishing humans well, why are we thrown with all the adversities and the challenging situations where either of the solutions are not the ideal ones? I mean, either of the approaches are not the ideal ones, and there are consequences. So, what do you think is the context of this particular analysis?
I think the first 2 questions are relevant to understand the third and fourth one, because uh, if the divine is impersonal and passive, then the question dissolves. But if it is personal and active, active means they have active engagement of how the world is working. Then this question comes: if they are actively involved in this, then why any kind of evil is happening to the world? Why there is any kind of cyclone, earthquake, volcano eruption, and any type of even why they have made humans like that, if they are inducive to corruption. So we can ask all those questions. If the answer of the above 2 question is personal and active, but if the reply is opposite to that, then the question becomes irrelevant.
I see. Okay, so now assuming that the answer to first question is personal and active, and that is why we are examining the fourth question. In that case, we as of yet we don't have an answer now. Why of all the whys that we are asking? as of yet we don't have the answers, right?
No, I think these are not questions that you have an answer to in the sense that, you know, there are like answers to factual questions, right? By the way, there is a lot of background noise at somebody. Yeah, okay. All right.
Maybe
So
as
let
sorry, Ram.
me share my view of this question first of all. Is this particular question, the fourth question of like, is the divine wishing humans well, or is it chastising or indifferent to them? I think that as human beings, we have certain limitations in how we reason about things. You know, like when we look at anything, we have this like moral imposition of whether it is like good or bad, because that is essentially what this thing boils down to. Is the divine wishing humans well, or is it chastising or indifferent? This is like assuming that there is an intention in the divine, and that it is like you know, like wishing you well, that there is something that is good and something that is bad. If it is if it so happens that human beings are living well, then it means that you know, divine is intending for your well-being. Or if we are being, or if we're suffering for something, then it means that, you know, it is bad. This whole like distinction of like, you know, well-being being good and suffering being bad in itself is an inherent prejudice that we have. I think that it is coming from that deep rooted assumption that we have as human beings, that this is good, this is bad, that we see you know, we don't see the indifference that natural laws have to us. So I do think that, you know, this is my personal opinion, that nature is indifferent. Anything that is it is, you know, it is as indifferent to us as like we are indifferent to maybe something much smaller. But for example, let's say like an ant, but it's also questionable whether we truly have indifference. Maybe like some of us feel pain when we see an ant being crushed or something else. So it's a, I think it's an open question. I don't know if there is a single answer to this.
Thanks, Sandeep. Thanks, Raghav. I am
Yeah,
hoping that I'll get some some moving in the direction of some answers when we complete reading this entire book.
but
So we
suffering is
hope.
bad is like universally accepted norm, right? Like there is no culture or no tradition which opposes this one.
No, but you know, maybe I am different, because I think that suffering is very beneficial. You know, people, it's about like how you perceive it. I think that you can actually be indifferent to your own suffering,
I'm
and
saying I'm not.
that
I'm saying,
can cease your suffering.
but we can, like, there are two kind of suffering. One is like if you go gym, you have to take the pain and get some gain. That is different. But if some cyclone came and killed many people, how can we find good in that?
No, I'm saying like I'm saying that suffering is just the example that you gave. Like, let's say there's a cyclone, and you know, like maybe your house is destroyed, or you lost somebody. That is like true suffering in the sense that everybody thinks of suffering as. I'm not talking about the gym kind of suffering. I'm talking about, like, you know, things that happen to you, things that you don't have control over, things that take away something of your desire, and all these things. And even that kind of suffering, right? I think that you have control over how it affects you. You can actually choose how much it affects you, and how, you know, how you're impacted by it. So I don't generally see suffering as bad, and you know, things that happen out of luck as good. I think this is actually a philosophy in itself, that, you know, that you don't perceive one thing as good and one thing as bad, because the moment you think that, right, the
Then we should not even tag suffering as suffering. It's just an event which we are tagging it as suffering.
that's
I
what I'm
think.
saying. Yeah, that's how I see it, actually. Because like the moment if you think that suffering is bad and something to be avoided, and then you know, well-being is something to be cherished and sought after, um, what happens is that, like, you start, the moment things happen, you know, like for your to accelerate your well-being, what happens is that you start fearing the loss of it, and also, like, you start fearing the possibility of a suffering. So you tend to become like slave to these, like, imaginations of what's going to happen and what, the anxieties that come with that. And I've seen, this is like my personal observation, that I've seen so many people who have the most anxiety or the most depression or the most amount of mental distress. A lot of that is like not because of things that are happening to them, but because of things what they're doing in response to what's happening to them. For example, if something good happens, then they're overjoyed, and then that overjoy goes to a certain peak, and then they start fearing, because now they've identified with that good thing. That overjoyness happens because of a surprise, like they go through a brief period of it, but then once they know that they have it, now they go into a state of fear. They fear losing it. They fear something happening to it. So being indifferent, being dispassionate, I won't call the word indifferent, I'm calling it dispassionate. Not being affected emotionally by your suffering or your serendipitous, the joys that come across your way, that are out of your control. Being dispassionate towards them actually immunizes you from things that are not in your control. You can still, it's like waves in water. You don't control the waves, but you can ride the waves. If that makes sense. But that's just my personal view. That's why I'm saying that this the answer to this question is like open-ended.
Raghav, can I add
Yeah,
something to your point?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. So just in continuation to what you said and not contradiction. So there is a book called The Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. And this book is entirely set in Nazis concentration camp. The author was one of the inmates of that camp, one of the prisoners of that camp. And he himself has witnessed lot of different behaviors given the exact same situation. So yes, what suffering is a pure philosophical question rather than anything else. And he said that in that scenario, towards the end of it, the situation was so bad that it was even cannibalism was seen in the camp. And even in that extreme situation, some of the people were able to uphold their values and their character. So the author in that book, he says that it's totally up to one's character, which gives us a certain kind of response to a given situation. So that is one point. And another thing that I want to add is there are religions in the current time which says that when you go through the suffering with a positive approach, in the life after death, that is the place where you get rewarded. So I'm not talking about Hinduism. There's another religion that I'm currently quoting. And so that is how different entities are seeing suffering as.
Which was, I mean, what was the thing that you were quoting from the other religion?
In
Can you just repeat it?
Islam, so there are many times debate coming now, like especially with respect to gender discrimination and all. So when any people are commenting on some of the practices, so the argument there is when one goes to everything that is established and deemed to be expected, they are rewarded in the afterlife.
Right. Yeah. The promise. Yeah.
Yes.
No, this exists in every religion, I would say. I think it is that aspect of things is more like a tool to control the population who wouldn't know better. It's like if you want to control a sheep, right, and they're misbehaving, you take a stick and then you make sure that you guide them, or you sort of like push them. You don't have to like reason with them, right? It's kind
Right.
of like that. And I think, and a lot of people have innate fears, right? Because they don't know what's going to happen after death. They fear death inherently. And to those people, like when you say that, okay, after death you're actually going to go to a great place if you do this, their fear is going to motivate them to conform to the
Yeah,
instructions.
and sometimes just like there is a story that we read in childhood that a man to claim the prize from the king, he was standing in chilling cold water the entire night, and he was focusing on a lamp which was placed very far away, and the king denied to give him the prize, saying that he was getting heat from the lamp, and that is why he was able to survive the cold. Whereas the philosophical fact is, obviously he was not getting heat, but yes, he was getting the strength by focusing on something. So when we say that there is something good in afterlife, we somehow give people strength to ignore what is happening and just to live through it without focusing much on the suffering, rather than focusing on something good that is coming up.
Okay. That's an interesting point. Yeah. Okay. Actually, I just noticed the time that we have like 15 minutes left. There are a bunch of things that I had on this thing. Couple of things. You know, the one thing that I really found interesting was the yugas, right? I don't know if you guys have got to that place. It talks about the time scale of things, and there are like various descriptions of various time scales like kalpa, yuga, manava, antara, and maybe like I can share my screen in case like you guys haven't read this part, but this was super fascinating, because it talks about like time scales that are honestly like I've never really seen this scale of time described anywhere. So it talks about like yuga. According to somebody, yuga consists of 1,000 divine years, but in other context, can be a span of 5 years. Together, a set of 4 yugas amounts to 12,000 divine years, which is the equivalent of like 432,000 human years. So 12,000 years into 360. So 1,000 yugas constitute one kalpa, which is a single divine day. So 1,000 yugas, like one yuga is 4 yugas amounts to these many years, right? And 1,000 yugas constitute one kalpa.
It's a multiple of 12, and then it incrementally goes from 4,800 to 12,200.
And a kalpa is a single divine day for the creator of Brahma, and he lives for 100 divine years, right? Which is like 3,000 billion human years. At the end of this unimaginable period, the Brahma dies, and the universe is destroyed before a new Brahma appears. This was super fascinating to me because it kind of like brings this concept of samsara. I don't know if you guys have heard of this term samsara, which is the cyclical nature of time, right? Everything goes through a certain cycle. It has a beginning and end, and then a new beginning after that. So even Brahma, right? Brahma is considered to be like the holy trinity of, one of the holy trinity, and even he has like a cyclical nature to him. This was really fascinating, and you can imagine how big the scope of like what we are talking about here is compared to our own lives. And this was a very fascinating section for me to go through. Did you guys get through to this part, or is it just me?
Yeah. So how I would take this as, I'm 100% sure this is not 100% accurate, but the takeaway for me with this is, whoever wrote this, they understand the vastness of the universe and how how big, how small our own lifespan is compared to the cyclic nature of the universe, if I have to say.
Yeah.
At least in our own understanding, in our own universe, if it is the only one. And they are trying to give some kind of gigantic number to it, and it is astronomically, we cannot actually disprove it or prove it as per our own existing data that we have, but it's a fascinating thought that that goes into the creation of the universe itself. And of course, I think another takeaway from me for this is, like, if I have to compare it to our existing knowledge of not knowledge, it is a hypothesis, right? Even Big Bang theory is a hypothesis for its own its own defense. So if I have to compare it to the hypothesis of Big Bang theory itself, it's Brahma is like starting of the Big Bang, and then the end of the universe is like the Shiva, right? And our own existence is the existence of universe itself is credited to Vishnu. So that is the reason why most of the most of the literature goes around Vishnu, because it's around our own existence. So Vishnu is the how you say, present, it's like present. What we experience as a human is about Vishnu, and is the avatars and all is like, I wouldn't say it's concretely, evolution or something like that, but whatever we go through our life and whatever we experience as our own reality, it constitutes to the psychology of Vishnu.
Yeah. No, I'm not saying that these are like accurate or anything. I don't even care if it's
Yeah, I
accurate or
know. You
not.
didn't say
Yeah.
that. It's my own takeaway that I would
Yeah.
say that it is not accurate,
I
but
think
the fact that they are trying to put all these big numbers, like very very big numbers, it makes to see that even they have some kind of understanding how big the universe is, right? It is not like accurate and all, but they
yeah.
understand the massive nature of the universe.
Yeah, I think for me it doesn't even matter whether it is true or not.
Yeah,
It is irrelevant, because like the notion itself is like fascinating by itself. It's got a merit. But obviously, I think the reason why I also say that it doesn't matter is because like it is difficult to conclusively prove either ways. So
yeah,
any kind of discussion surrounding whether it is true or not is just going to be like speculation and just that. But beyond that, there is a value in this, like in terms of like just the conceptual value of it, that
yes,
there is a universal nature, universal aspect to this cyclical nature, that
yeah,
that extends beyond the mundane, and it goes into the supramundane aspects of reality as well. And the fact that he says that like Brahma dies and then a new Brahma is reborn, and the universe itself is like reborn because of his birth and death and rebirth. That
yeah,
itself says that beyond the universe also there is like a cyclical nature of things, and that's a fascinating concept. um yeah, I was really, this is the reason why actually I'm enjoying the reading of this book, not because like maybe I'm thinking it's historically accurate or something. It's just like the places that it takes your mind to is kind
yeah,
of like unparalleled in terms of like what other kind of like scriptures or other things do. It just takes you to a different realm, and it seems to have like a certain consistency. I mean, it's kind of like absurd to say that to one extent, because of all the things that are completely inconsistent with our understanding of reality. Like not this part in specific, but in terms of like, for example, when they talk about, oh, there was a guy who was hunting in the forest, and then he saw wild animals copulate, and he got aroused, and there was an unintentional seminal ejaculation, and he sent that semen to his wife, and along the way the semen dropped in the river, and it was consumed by a fish, and the fish was captured by a fisherman, and
yeah,
then inside the fish's body were a child, a boy and a girl, and the boy was sent to
yeah,
the prince, and all these things. Like this is like, none of it like makes any logical sense, but it's a story aspect of it. I think in some ways, the more I think about this, I think Mahabharata in itself and the Gita in itself, these are like historical devices to maybe like uh, teach philosophy to the lay people, because for them stories matter more, stories make more sense, which is why the Bible also is very popular, because the Bible has this, it kind of like expounds certain things through the stories, and people to
yeah,
this day are able to relate to these things through the stories, because stories are something that you can relate to and you can actually emotionally connect with. It has substance in an emotional sense, right? So you're not just like it's not no longer just intellectual memory. It is just like like emotional bonding that you have with these characters, so you're able to remember it more, or remember it better and apply it. So I think in some sense it does make sense that is the case behind this as well. And the reason why they have all these like fantastical stories is because of the time that they lived in. These are more fascinating, and people had like much lower threshold for acceptance. of what is considered to be true or rational or whatever.
Even if you have to not align, let's say an argument if you have to make about scientific accuracy, even the scientific methodology itself starts with an hypothesis, fiction, imagination, and assumption, right? So I would the wonderful thing I would take away from this book or any text that have like wild imaginations is it is a part of human psyche of imagining things and then go
Pursue that.
pursue it. Yeah. So
See,
it's an integral part of reaching some, even trying to get some solid data, right?
the curious thing about this whole thing is that as human beings, we wake up ignorant,
Yeah.
right? Everybody, this is our common reality, that we wake up ignorant, and everything that we come through is coming through a first-hand direct experience of reality. And if that is all we would do, right? Like beyond survival, we may not aspire for more. It is because of human imagination. It even like brings us out of the caves. Like you've heard of this allegory of like the Plato's cave, right? You're sitting in a cave and you see the shadows on the wall and you think that is all reality, but the shadows are being cast by the things that are happening outside of the cave. So for you to like look beyond the shadows, you actually need an imagination, because if you don't have an imagination, you might just like think the shadows are the reality in itself. So this imagination is what constitutes human intelligence in a way. It is foundational to human intelligence. And but yeah, that is, I think, I mean, you talked about like in science, like we have hypothesis creation itself is, of course that is the case, but I think here it is, you don't need to go to that extent to talk about like science having imagination. I think this is more of like a tool to guide the people who are not capable of digesting higher forms of wisdom.
Okay.
But I could be wrong. I don't know. We have to read the Gita. I think that's just what makes logical sense to me. But yeah, I still can't really make up my mind of it, which really like speaks to the complexity of what this is, that you can't really come to a simplistic conclusion and be satisfied. It's got like multiple dimensions to this. So I'm actually curious to see how my own thoughts change with more reading. But did anybody have anything else that we wanted to discuss?
Let me
Raghav,
pull
you
up
said you have many else as
Yeah, you
well.
can go on. You can go on.
I just wanted to mention one thing, that while the characters were introduced and the background of animosity and extent of animosity was being explained, now I kind of think that I get better understanding of what is it when they talk about extent of a dharma, and so now finally we need to establish dharma. So if I have to relate it to myself, I can say that there is a limit to how much of injustice you can tolerate to yourself. At some point of time, you do need to speak up. So, I mean, if Kunti going to Karna just before the war saying, "You are my son and don't kill your brothers," where was her motherly love all this while? And only that when she realized that her firstborn can kill rest of her sons, and that is when she goes and expresses, "Okay, you are my son." So this is the kind of extreme selfishness in this entire epic that I saw. Yeah, that's it. You
But
can go, Sandeep.
how do you what do you mean by selfishness? Who's selfish in this scenario?
Everyone is selfish. Now I want the kingdom. I'll nourish my own animosity and jealousy. And Kunti's point, I was saying that I mean, while she was unmarried, she had Karna, so she had all those societal repercussions, and she hid. Then author is saying that all the year she tracked Karna's growing up years. She tracked via the secret agents, but she never ever at any point of time approached him saying that you are my son. But just before the war, she approaches him and says that please don't kill your brothers. You are my son, they are your brothers, don't kill them. So this is the selfishness that I've just mentioned.
Okay. No, I think that thing is like very essential for Indian society, especially. I think people have too much tolerance here. I think we need to be shown that you can't be tolerant of like injustice to you, because otherwise like you're just going to be very passive about like life. Um, but yeah, I didn't think about it in terms of like selfishness. I think to a certain extent everybody is selfish, but I don't know if you can say everybody, right?
No,
There is
to
a
different degrees, I would agree, everyone, to different degrees and depending upon the situation. The selfishness varies in situation to situation.
but how do you say selfishness? I think it's different from self-interest, right?
Yeah, yeah. I
So
think self-interest is a bit more positive word than selfish.
no, these are two different things. I'll tell you
Okay.
what the difference is. So selfishness is basically, or self-interest is like pursuing actively pursuing the things that are of interest to you. You are
Hmm.
aware of what is important for you. You're aware of like how to approach it, and you are actively pursuing it. That is like people who are acting on self-interest.
Okay.
Selfishness comes in the picture when your self-interest is in conflict with somebody else's self-interest. Now you are basically like thwarting their self-interest to achieve yours. That is like in a sense selfishness. But because like you're basically like competing with others, and you're putting yourself ahead of others. That is where selfishness comes in. So it's not the same thing. These are two separate things. Like for example, let's say that I have like $10 billion is my total net worth, and I see that somebody else is coming in, and they are trying to like compete with me. So I don't want them to take my market share. So I'm going and like purchasing their company, or like creating troubles for them. That is selfish.
Hmm.
If I'm clear about
Business
what myself,
competitiveness.
yeah, if I'm clear about what my self interest is, like for example, my interest is just that I have enough wealth to take care of myself and do the best of my abilities to deliver a great product in society, and have live well with my family and kids or whatever. That and it wouldn't matter that this some other player is coming into scene competing with me. It wouldn't matter. They're small. It's fine. But if I if I if I want to like destroy them because they're challenging me, then it comes into the like very petty way of like selfishness, that you're actually willing to step on somebody to like get more than what you want, um or more than what you need. um but again, it's a very gray line, because like you are the final authority on what your self-interest constitutes. So you could say that my self-interest is to ensure that I'm the only player in the scene or something.
And
So
because it is subjective as well, na,
yeah,
Raghav, it's not written in black and white.
exactly. Yeah, everything is subjective in terms of like what, see, you are the only authority on like what you decide as is your self-interest,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
So I think active self-interest combined with a certain amount of compassion is very noble. Like everybody would appreciate that. They would see the success that your self-interest brings you, but also they would see the nobility in you not um willing to step on others for your success.
Yeah,
Thanks,
Raghav, I would
Raghav.
like to bring up another point that mentioned in page 46.
Hmm.
So it's a contribution to the Sanskrit literature or scholarship. The many-sidedness of the Bhagavad Gita makes the scripture real touchstone of the Sanskrit literature. So that is also one way to have, one way to look at the beauty of the literature itself. And I would like to point one thing about this Vyasa, the story of Vyasa. So apparently it seems that Dhritarashtra and Pandu are the sons of Vyasa, and the Vyasa's childhood name was Krishna. So it is just, I'm conjecturing that he might have used that name to his childhood name as the Krishna in Gita itself, and then it's his own life experience of whatever the Mahabharata is about. I think it is all about Vyasa's
So
life.
you thinking of it as like the ramblings of a self-obsessed man
No,
trying to
not a
portray himself.
self-obsessed man. I mean, if conjecturing that it is true, I mean, like, let's say if the Dhritarashtra and Pandu are sons of Vyasa, I'm not saying he's obsessed or something. I think he's just it's an impression of his own, thoughts. I wouldn't say obsessed or anything like that. But the entire epic, if considering it, he's the author, or like, let's say he's the main author of Mahabharata. It might have been roughly based on his own real life. That's what I'm saying.
Hmm. Okay. No, yeah, I think he also injects himself into the story also, which is the thing, it comes back to how much of this fact and how much of it is fiction, how much of it is inspired, how much is imagined.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think overall, right, regardless of any of these things, I think it just it's fascinating. That is the thing that it boils down to,
Yeah.
regardless
Yeah.
of anything, and that is in itself is of great value. Actually, one other thing that I wanted to bring up is because this thing comes like maybe like around page 60 or something like that, where he talks about like the Vedas and the Upanishads, and how Vedas were kept secret from the general public for a very long time because they didn't want to
Yes.
corrupt it. And he actually brings that analogy to the Gita itself. Now that there are so many paperbacks of the Gita, and this Gita is like so common, like everybody knows about it, that there has been a corruption of it as well, you know
Yeah. Yeah.
and and actually that kind of like relates to what happened today, like with in the WhatsApp group, because I had to like there's this one person who comes up and he's asking all these questions which kind of like don't really have an informed basis, right? It's like he's trying to challenge something without doing the homework to prepare to
Yeah.
be a formidable challenge, like to an actual challenge, rather than just wasting our time with things. So
Yeah, yeah. I mean, even if it is a real challenge, I would have been very inclined to it. But it is like a shallow challenge, assuming that he's
yeah.
assuming that what other person is thinking, which is ridiculous, right?
Yeah, and this is the kind of thing that actually like relates back to that reading that I did of like why they kept the Gita. I mean, the Vedas are like very protected. Like it was a strict tradition around like who gets to study it,
Yeah.
and there is a certain procedure for studying it and all this, so that like there is no nobody coming in like taking snippets of it and creating misinterpretations and going off with it, right? So it was in a certain way that secrecy is a protection. But today
Yeah.
obviously everything is like open knowledge, and we see the consequence of that. I'm not saying that it's a bad thing that it's so open, but we do have the consequence of it, that people have this like very shallow hearsay based understanding, rather than actual study based understanding, and they form opinions fairly quickly. And then they come and like they ask you the kind of questions that reinforce their shallow opinions formed on the basis of not enough work done, not enough intellectual study. And it was just like taking away our time, as a group that is focused on having more focused discussions. And it was interesting because like I kind of like read that passage right when this thing happened, as I was reading it, and then this thing happened, and it kind of like there was an alignment there. um so it is fascinating. I wonder like how many other things will come up that we would be able to like relate to in a in our personal lives. I think that was actually the basis for us starting this group, to sort of like see the relevance of it in the daily life. And yeah, I mean, we're yet to actually read the actual content, so looking forward to those.
See, even because this is been put into religion and mass distributed to the masses, that is why it is being criticized and pointed out and attacked in many ways. But how many, I have a personal question, how many people actually understand quantum mechanics and how many people are actually fighting against it? See, it's an open knowledge. It's very complicated to understand, but no one is racing towards understanding and no try to attack the understanding of quantum mechanics, right? So that's what that's where the religious nature comes in. When somebody brings in some kind of a thing and then makes it a religion, then the end consumer, the end the person who is receiving that kind of impression is trying to attack something that they don't even understand, because they have been oppressed, or they have been no, how you say, contradicting their own understanding to the religious aspect of it, but they're trying to attack it to the source of whatever it is came from, something like that.
Wow, Sandeep, it was really great.
Sorry,
Good
say that again.
perspective. Good perspective.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of the times when people are asking these questions, it kind of like brings out their own biases or like lack of understanding than it does anything to challenge what they're talking about. So I think it does take a certain attitude to approach something. So when you're looking at something like the Bhagavad-Gita, like if you know nothing about it, and you already made an opinion about it, then you're going to like try to reinforce your ill-formed opinions. Instead of that, if you were to approach it with an open mind, knowing and acknowledging full well that you don't understand it, you're not qualified to have an opinion on it, and then you approach it, then your approach will be different. And this is true for anything. Like even for example, let's say that I don't understand quantum mechanics, and I go start like challenging the physicists with like ill-informed questions that don't come of any kind of like curiosity or anything. It's not like the quantum physicists will like prevent you from participating because they are opposed to questioning. They would want to save their time for more substantive, more constructive outcome. They will kick you out, but not because like you are questioning or challenging their orthodox dogma or anything. It's more like you're being kicked out because your engagement is unproductive. Your approach is not useful even for you or the others, and that is a challenging thing to sort of like justify, because after I kicked out the person, right, they were asking like, why did you do this? I was just asking questions. This is like becoming an echo chamber. This is people are afraid of my questions. They're worried about being challenged. And
So
all these
he's
things.
accepting his intention was to challenge.
No, yeah, I mean, like he was saying that he's reading it and he's asking questions, and people are just afraid of being challenged, and I don't want to participate. I mean, and I had to educate him that the reason why I had to do this is because your engagement is unproductive, and we are coming in with like educated discussion rather than uneducated debate. You know.
Yeah,
But
he posted a text and a lot of people actually genuinely replied, right?
but yeah, I think it's also a matter of like whatever for me it came across as like like just engagement without any seriousness. It was more like time pass thing, right? He's not interested in reading. He just wants to come and challenge. And I think I'm sure like maybe he'll take it to some other circle saying that okay, these people are just close-minded echo chamber people. They're not interested in having an intellectual engagement. But again, this is like this is the dilemma of me, like as an administrator of the group. Like for me, it's like I want to keep an open environment. I don't like banning people. I don't like kicking people off. So it's also like a ethical consideration of where do you draw the line, and you have to sometimes make decisions that you have to justify, because I don't know for a fact whether he's read or not. I can only see the productiveness of the outcome of his conversations. And anyway, it's like I'm hoping.
Raghav, do you see with the context of discussing Bhagavad Gita, where do you draw the line and put your foot down?
Exactly. That's what I'm talking about. Like even when we talk about this like struggle between Arjuna's dilemma, right? Like that he's going to war and he has these like conflicting considerations, and each of it seems fair in its own right. But how do you decide, right? This is actually a very, very, very fundamental aspect of human life. In like anybody who's lived their life seriously, they'll have these like large philosophical dilemmas. Like
Right.
for me, like this happened like when I was making a huge life decision of like whether I should stay in the US or come back to India, and I had to make a very, very huge blind decision based on a value rather than the actual outcomes of things, because like sometimes you don't know what's going to happen. It's like completely dark ahead. In those moments you have to make a decision based on some intrinsic values rather than external studies of the outcomes, right? You have to go by what you know to be true without even the external knowledge. And sometimes there is self-doubt as well, right? I think whatever I've seen of the Gita, and from outside of reading the book, right, there is a point where Arjuna has this like self-doubt. He goes through this like period of like self-doubt, and I think what Krishna says in that context is that it's okay for you to have self-doubt. It's important for you to have self-doubt, but once you make a decision, no going back. You can't go back to the period of self-doubt. You have to commit to your decision.
But where
Yeah.
has he said that?
No, I'm saying like I haven't said that. I mean, I haven't read it from the book. This is just like an anecdote, like a secondhand narration of what happens in the Gita. So I'm not really sure if it is accurate even. But yeah, this is a story that I've heard from somebody else who was talking about the Gita. But again, even I mean, even if that is the case, right? Who like how do you decide that is the right way to approach anything? Maybe it is good to go back and have a self-doubt even after you made a decision, right? We
Raghu,
don't know
in
this thing.
present days time, that is what we do na. At periodic times, we re-evaluate. I mean, there is something I do. I'll come with that terminology maybe next time. But then they say कि sometimes what happens is because we made a bad decision and just like to stick with it, we keep doing it. Let's say for the startup context as well. If there is a point that you realize that this product cannot be sold, just to stick with it because you made a decision to make this product, that's not we do in the present time. Now we reevaluate
No,
it in
it's
periodic times.
no. I think you're maybe like framing it in a way that is not analogous. So, what we're talking about is like irreversible decisions,
Okay.
right?
Don't
This
don't feel guilty about those irreversible decisions.
It's not about feeling guilty or not. It's about like backtracking. Like you made a decision, you committed to the decision, and then
I think
you
these are the moralities that were conditioned to us by the society. We can't go with this approach to read the Gita. I think we should eliminate, or we should keep aside this understanding while reading this book.
which
Or
understanding?
The understanding that once we take decision, we should stick to it. If it is
No, I think we also have to like be careful about like how we frame this question. Like, what do you mean by decision, and what do you mean by a situation? Is it a
I think
cyclical?
we should ask more fundamental questions like why do we take decision? Like we can go backtrack. We can't start from the question from
You
the
know,
decision point of view. We
if
can
you want to
we
go
should
more fundamental, right? There is even a more fundamental question, which is like, what should you even want, right? How do you decide what to want? Have you guys thought about this?
You have to draw a line somewhere,
it's
Raghav.
based on what it's based on what we are conditioned to.
No, but let's say you decide that you don't want to be going by what you're conditioned to. You want to like
How
maybe create your own like create your own conscious decision about what to want. In that case, like how do you decide what to want?
it's another debate ki do we whatever we choose by our conscious choice is a part of pre-existing knowledge or is it something we create?
I mean, can you even create knowledge? You can discover the unknown. What do you mean by creating knowledge?
We have wait.
Okay. But yeah, I mean, I honestly don't know the extent of the philosophical questions that are in play in the Gita. Like, these are only second-hand accounts of like what I've heard from the outside.
Maybe we can form our own opinion now. After reading, it's okay. We can leave it open-ended now.
What do you mean by maybe? You're definitely forming your own opinion.
On this question, if we form or not, we'll realize after reading, na? Are you sure you'll form an opinion? I'm not sure, so I was talking about.
No, I'm
mine.
saying like everybody is going to form their own opinion.
On this
like-
question, I'm saying like let's
Hmm.
read and see whether we get something from the text.
That's what. Yeah, it's an open question. It's just like I don't know what to expect, and I'm going in with a certain blankness.
The question. I just disconnect.
Ankit, we're not able to hear you, man. Your audio is like very low quality right now.
Now, can you repeat the question? I just disconnected few minutes back.
No, I wasn't asking a question. I think Avantika was saying that, like, maybe we'll form our own opinion. I was just saying that you will definitely form our own opinions. But we were just discussing that the deeper questions of, like, how do we even know what to want?
Yeah,
Is
I
that
mean,
question for me, Madam?
Sorry?
Is that question for me?
No. I'm
No,
just like,
it's
it's an open question. I'm just saying that
open question.
it's an open question because, like, the reason I'm asking that question is that you can imagine Krishna, like, or Arjuna's dilemma as he's going to war. He has like multiple considerations. He has like conflicting sources of self-interest, right? Like, on the one hand he has this interest, and then the other hand he has other interests. So how do you even decide what is
The
want
the
out of
more
it?
fundamental question is who we are. From that, the question comes what we want.
Yeah, and I think that way too many people start living their life and making plans without addressing these fundamentals. And they have, like, let's say they retire, and then their mental faculties have diminished, and at that point they start asking these fundamental questions, and at that time they probably don't have the stamina to pursue them.
I think this question is addressed right in the second chapter. I have read the Gita in a shallow way. I think this question is addressed who we are and what I am. Not wanting wala question. I think this is covered somewhere in
Okay.
the
Okay. But I'm just saying, like, in the modern reality, we don't pursue this question. Like, I feel like especially in India, right? You're born as a child, and then you're immediately, they saddle you up, and then they start racing you. Like, a lot of people, like, they go to their mid 20s, mid 30s, and they'll realize, what was the even point of me doing all of these things? Like, they don't know the motivation, because the motivation is not even theirs. They were just
That's what I'm saying. What they want can be delusional. Like some people from Islam communities, especially the girls, they say, "I want to wear burqa. It's my free will." Like, and they know that they are being suppressed, and they are forced to say that. And after saying this many times, they really feel that, I want this. Some of them. So it's something that they don't want, but their subconscious mind tells them to. I want this.
Yeah. I think a lot of it is also, like, you understanding the deeper nature of the mind as well, because that has a huge role to play in our behaviors and everything about us. And I think there is some references of the Bhagavad-Gita being like a exposition of yoga, right? And I don't know if you guys have looked into yoga as a discipline, but it is all about, like, you overcoming your mind. I think the first sutra,
yeah,
Yoga Sutra, is like the Chitta Vritti Nirodha, which means, like, eliminating the impurities of the mind so that, like, you can see clearly. So it was also, actually, it was mentioned in this book, I think, that the Bhagavad Gita is like the yoga for the lay people.
Yeah,
Or
the chapters themselves are named after yoga. If you can see the yoga of knowledge, yoga of action,
yeah,
yoga of wisdom, they're all named with yoga
yeah,
as a
yeah,
part
yeah.
of the title.
But anyway, I think we should close in the next 5 minutes. I think we should discuss what pages to discuss in the next session. So I think what we'll do is we will start with the first chapter, right? So after 79, let me share my screen. So this is part 2 starting. It starts on page number
77.
yeah 77 something. Since some of us have not read some of these other chapters preceding this, let's start with something small. So what we'll do is okay. Oh my God, it keeps going. Okay, let me go to the index. Let's see what's up. We can see there. So let's say we come until here. So 79 to 93, right? Yoga of Arjuna's despondency, the yoga of knowledge. So we'll go until 92. Okay, so 79 to 92. But obviously, for some of us, this is going to be from 47 to 92, right? So this time, let's commit to reading up till the point so that we can have like a full discussion with some of us not left behind, right? So can we do this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it a commitment? Are you gonna like go back on your decision and commitment?
Well, man, I'm already at 100, so.
Not you, but the lesser mortals here. The Ankit, I feel a hesitation. Maybe you have a self-doubt. Maybe you can make it or not. Okay, I think he's afraid to commit to 92. Anyway, I'll also make sure to come prepared. So we'll plan for like 77 to 92. Yeah.
See, the thing about this is, I just wanted to say that the chapter 1 has I'm not going to spoil it or something, but I think it has to be read in a continuous, because if you read chapter 1, I don't think there is much to discuss about it. I mean, of course, we can discuss about it again. I keep feeling the fact that it has to be discussed as a whole. But again, let's see how
Whole
it
as in chapter 1 to 18, like you want to read it fully.
Yeah, that's how that is how I feel like after reading up to page 100, because the chapter 1 is like, it is just I don't know, it is
No,
setting the stage further. Yeah.
No, the reason why I wanted to do this is because we haven't gotten onto the chapters yet. So we want to have
Yes,
a
yes,
taste
yeah,
first,
understand. Yeah, yeah.
and then we'll decide. I think maybe next week we'll also be able to have an opinion on what you're saying,
Sure.
and we'll
Sure, sure.
decide then how to proceed. And by that time, we'll also have like fewer we'll have the continuous chapter. So maybe you can go 3 chapters at once or something like that.
Yeah.
Because right now we are doing a transition from this to that. So let's start with just one chapter, and then we'll take the reading from there. So are we
Yeah,
good?
sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Take care. See you next
Thanks,
week.
Okay, bye-bye.
thanks everyone. Had a great session today.
Yeah. All right. Bye.
Bye.